Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how
He's alive!
Welcome to where the weird ones are.
Every time I speak, I want the truth to come out.
Powerful figures in Hollywood, as well as powerful politicians who are in fact not human. They're reptiles or they're lizards or perhaps extraterrestrials.
I don't think it is a human. I think it's a Sasquatch.
Go ahead and run! Run home and cry to mama!
Let's get weird.
What's up, you fucking weirdos? Welcome to another episode of Where the Weird Ones Are. My name is Kevin, but you probably already knew that, and if you didn't, now you do. Today's episode is with Michelle Souliere. She is an author. She has wrote books called Strange Maine and Bigfoot in Maine. So I literally just ordered one of her books, so I'm definitely going to check it out. But I highly recommend you check it out. Her books, you can find them at the greenhandbookshop.com, or you can even pick them up in person if you go to Portland to the Greenhand Bookshop. It's her bookshop store. She runs it. She runs the show. So definitely go check it out if you're in the area of Portland, Maine. I am definitely going to make a trip up there at some point. But she's an amazing person, lovely person to talk to. Really enjoyed this conversation. She's researched the topic of Bigfoot for a while now, and has talked to so many people about it and everything in the state of Maine. So yeah, she's working on a another one. Uh, when it comes out, as soon as she knows, I'm sure she'll let everybody know. So we shall see. We shall see what happens. But I highly recommend, if you are in the need to flavor up your motherfucking food, hit up Flavors of the Forest for some Bigfoot's breath. I know that's probably blurry on the camera, but it's really good. It's freeze dried garlic, extremely potent, way better than the store bought shit, because I definitely tasted a lot. Like using just a little bit of it, I taste it a lot better than I do with a lot of the store brand stuff. So, if you're making your own pizza dough, or you want to throw it on some steak, or, whatever you choose to do with garlic powder, I highly recommend Bigfoot's Breath garlic dust. They have garlic dust with infused with lion's mane. They got a spicy garlic, and they have a ginger. So highly recommend it. I love the taste of it. It's also in the hot sauce. So flavorsforest.com/weird. That's where you can get yourself some. So go check them out. All right. So with that being said, I do have a review. So I'll read it to you if I can get into it really quick, because you know I usually really mean to have it pulled up for when I do the intros, that sometimes I forget. So this comes from Riley Big Fish. I actually met Riley in Canton, Ohio, 2 weekends ago now for at Monster Fest. Super nice dude. He also has a podcast called Midwest Mythos. I highly recommend you check it out. It's a good show. It's much like this one. Um, so he 5 stars. He says Kevin is one of the nicest, funniest guys in the game. Definitely check the show out. I would leave a 6-star review if I could. Riley, I thank you, man. That means a lot to me. I really appreciate it. Riley's he's an amazing dude. He's also nice and funny. So, he cracked my back, dude. That's a nice thing for somebody to do. It was a little weird at first, but you know, I was having really bad back pain walking around in Canton, Ohio at Monster Fest. So, anywho, yeah, definitely go check it out. Midwest Mythos. It's a good show. I highly recommend it as well. I highly recommend every show that I talk about, just because I highly recommend them. They're highly recommendable. So, with that being said, if you like today's show or any of the other show, I know last week's episode got some, people can't, just because somebody is talking about something that you disagree with, you got to be negative about it. Anyways, if you like the show, please follow, like, share, and subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you don't, you don't. I mean, I won't greatly appreciate it if you don't. Uh but yeah, you can leave a rating and review on the website as well, where the weird ones are podcast.com. That's where you can also get the merch, you can get the hot sauce, you can get the blog, you can get the story of Geeks on the Streets. Chapter 4 should be out now. I know I missed the week prior because I was in Ohio, but shit happens. So if you've been following along, I apologize. If you haven't been following along, then it's all good. It's all good. It's all gravy, baby. So yeah, so if you're into that, definitely check it out. Definitely check out my buddy Drew over at Cryptid Warfare. That's a fantastic podcast. I think you will all enjoy. The Cryptid Huntress on YouTube. She's amazing. I'd highly recommend you go check her out as well. Even Spaced Out, check her out on Spaced Out Radio as well. What else do I have for you? I don't really have anything else. The next event that I'm going to is the Gettysburg Bash. So if you're in the area of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, I might see you there. And if you're not, then I might not see you there. I probably won't see you there. So again, please check out Michelle's books. Check out her store. You can get to her store online. It's greenhandbookstore.com. Yeah, man. She's an amazing person. I really enjoyed talking to her. She's funny. She's just an all around amazing person. And she's also from Maine. So go buy her books, man. Like, go fucking buy them. That's all I gotta say. So, if you're interested in the Patreon is $5 a month. You get Conspiracy Tuesdays and you get story time. You also get a free fucking coffee mug for just $5 a month. You might get a random free t-shirt. You'll just be like, you come home one day and you'll see a package sitting there and you'll be like, what the fuck is this? And it's a t-shirt. But that's only happens if you're a Patreon member. So, if you're not, that's totally fine. My life doesn't depend on people becoming Patreon members, so you get early access to the regular shows. And if you're listening to just the regular shows, I appreciate the shit out of you. I'm super excited to have you here. When I started this, I didn't think anybody was going to listen at all. And the fact that people do means the world to me. So I didn't set out to have a listenership or a following. So, you know, it's humbling. So thank you for everybody who listens and or watches the YouTube. Other than that, let's get into it with Michelle. We'll listen to some of her stories, her investigations, and about the books. So again, it's Strange Maine and Bigfoot in Maine. Those are the books, and I believe it's Bigfoot in Maine that is gonna be getting a sequel. So, um, they're just a compilation of people's experiences and stories from the state of Maine. So, I hope you all enjoy. Again, please like, follow, share, subscribe if you are in the mood to do that shit. And if you don't, you don't. So, all right. Without further ado, let's get into the show with Michelle Souliere, shall we?
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Let's get weird! Let's get weird! Let's get weird! Let's get weird! Weird! Get weird!
Hey y'all, this is Chelsea Deanne from Station 59, and you are listening to Kevin on Where the Weird Ones Are.
Everybody, welcome to another episode. So happy to have you here. Today I have author Michelle. God damn it, I forgot how you told me how to pronounce it.
Souliere.
Souliere. And she is, super interesting person. I wanted to listen to you speak because I've heard so many good things about you through so many people that I know. So Nomar Slevik, he reached out to me probably about a month ago and told me, he's like, you got to have Michelle on. And I was like, I actually already scheduled her to be on. I was like a month ago. Like I did this stuff in like 2 months in advance, and Nomar's like, oh, smart. But yeah, if you don't mind, real quick, Michelle, letting everybody know a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do.
Sure. My name is Michelle Souliere, and my day-to-day job is running the Greenhand Bookshop in Portland, Maine, but the stuff that I talk about is more the fact that I've written the book Strange Maine, True Tales from the Pine Tree State, and then Bigfoot in Maine. So those are, and I'm working on a volume 2 of Bigfoot in Maine right now, along with some other stuff.
Are you? Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And is it, correct me if I'm wrong, because I have not gotten a chance to check either book out, but they're like encounter stories, right? Compiled together, like you talk to people and you interview them and you just put their stories together, correct?
Yeah. Strange Maine is a lot more on the historic end of things, a lot of historic research in a variety of odd Maine history bits that haven't shown up in a lot of history books, which is kind of the bedrock of my work, is, Maine history that kind of slips through the cracks. But Bigfoot in Maine, it kind of starts out with kind of a historic overview and then dives into eyewitness encounters, which is kind of where a lot of my focus is now. So, because I knew, I'm a big proponent of oral history, and because that's the stuff that disappears when somebody goes away, their stories go with them. So I try to get down some of those stories and put them on record so that they're there for people to hear and read about in years to come.
Are you struggling with a lack of access to captivating entertainment and media? Are you faced with constant judgment and ridicule from friends and family for your inability to respond appropriately to sensitive situations? If this sounds like you might be suffering from being emotionally dead inside. But it's not too late to make a change. One Nothing Podcast is a newly available treatment for being dead inside. Taken just once every 2 weeks, One Nothing could make a world of difference. By combining carefully measured dark humor to the amazing original formula of grisly fatalities, One Nothing Podcast has successfully entertained thousands of people suffering from death inside. And with access across all podcast platforms, treatment has never been more readily available. But don't trust my word. Here's some real-world testimonials from a few of our listeners currently undergoing treatment.
From consistent doses of One Nothing podcast, my posture has greatly improved due to being kept on the edge of my seat.
The One Nothing podcast comes on, everybody be like, shut the f*** up. I be quiet, but when the episode's over, I be talking again.
Oh my gosh, buddy. I used to be on so many medications for blood pressure, and then I listened to One Nothing Podcast's episode on Kitty Genovese, moved into an apartment on my own, and haven't needed it since. That one really got my blood pumping.
You know, listening to One Nothing Podcast, I'm not constipated anymore. I'm just full of shit.
So what's stopping you from great entertainment?
One Nothing Podcast is not intended for all audiences. Listeners under 18 years of age should obtain permission from your parent or guardian before downloading. Tell your therapist if you're predisposed to whining, complaining, reading podcasts poorly, being overall combative, or being easily offended, as One Nothing Podcast might not be right for you.
So stop letting great content pass you by. Talk to your therapist today to see if One Nothing Podcast is right for you.
Nice. I like that. I like preserving stories for history. That's why I like talking about like all the folklore stuff and everything like that, is to like just kind of like continue passing it on so other people can learn about it and hear about it. So that's awesome that you're into that. That's pretty dope. I like that. But what was it that got you started to like actually research and like start interviewing people about, Bigfoot encounters?
Well, ironically, I had been a little reticent about doing that because originally when I signed on to do Bigfoot in Maine, it was going to be co-written with Lauren Coleman. He had a long background in, field research and eyewitness interviews and stuff like that. So he was going to handle that part of the book. And then, he wound up having a bunch of health issues, which, made all the stuff that was already kind of in his stuff he had committed to previously a lot higher pressure to get that stuff done once he got through the health issues. And so he was like, you know what? I think you can do this on your own. And I was like, really? And he was like, yeah. So he handed the book over to me and I did it all by myself. He did a great little introduction for it. And I probably, my nerd self would have been happy if I could have kept just doing historic research, but it's also living history. And so I had to kind of put the word out that I was looking for stories, and it took a while for people to start coming to me, but eventually it happened. And once I started talking to eyewitnesses, it just kind of snowballed from there. So, I don't know if you've done much of that kind of work yourself, but, cold calling somebody who probably doesn't want to talk to you about something can be really terrifying. So it's you really kind of have to psych yourself up and just kind of dive in and do it. I can't say it never gets any easier, but it never gets easy to do that.
Right. Yeah. I'll say when I started the podcast, so it deals with a lot of reaching out and asking people to come, especially people that I find interesting. And at first, I was so nervous and anxious every time.
Yeah.
I would write the message and I'm like, oh no, that doesn't sound right. I would delete it. And then I'd write it back out again. And then I'm like, no, that's not how I want to say that. And then I'll delete it. And then it'd take me like 5-6 tries before I wrote it the way that I felt like it was presentable enough for this other person to receive and receive it well and be like, yeah, and make them interested, So at first it was really hard, and now like I'm just like, if they don't want to, they don't want to. That's gonna be it. Like I'm just gonna tell them about the show, and like I'm interested in talking to them, and the reason why, and and that's it. So so far it's worked out, and I've had people reach out to me to be on the show. So like I like to say that I was a very much an introvert before the show, but because these topics interest me so much, now that I've started the show, I've become more of an extrovert, and it's so much more easy for me to actually talk to random people that I have no idea who they are. So
That's good. That's good. Yeah,
I could,
you break the ice a little bit, and there are still days where you're just like, oh,
yeah,
today's not the day. I'm not feeling it today, and you just give yourself some space, and then eventually it's time, and you make that call or send that message, and you're like, okay, we're gonna do this again.
yeah, yeah, and I don't think I've ever been the only for I think the first couple of interviews I was nervous, but I never and then all of a sudden the nerves stopped and they just completely went away. And then I had Ron Moorhead on recently, and they all those nerves came right back. I was so like I was nervous because I didn't want to like I don't know like give him a bad impression. I met him twice already, so he probably didn't remember me to begin with, but like when I was talking to him like you and I are now, I was like I was so anxious. I was like moving around, and he probably was like, "What is this kid on?"
Yeah,
But I think it came out well. I think it came out well.
Nice.
Um, so so how often once the like stories started coming in, how often did you go out and meet these people every time, or how'd that work?
It's kind of a mix. There are some people that I do go out and meet, especially if
Hmm.
it's stuff that's on their property,
Yeah.
or places that only they can get me to, and they're willing to. But some people are still really uncomfortable talking about it. Um, there was one woman I spoke to for the book who, it took me months and months and months, kind of working with her daughter
Yeah.
to actually get her to respond to me and agree to talk to me. And once I'd done that, she let me do a few follow-up questions later on when I was actually writing the chapter. But she was very frank about it, and she was just like, I would be happy to never talk about this again, basically. Not in those exact
Yeah.
words, but that was essentially what she meant, because, it wasn't it's there are certain experiences that you have that change your life and your worldview forever. And some
Oh yeah.
people, even though they've had those experiences, they're trying to push that off as much as possible. They didn't want to change their life view. They didn't want to change their worldview. They preferred things to stay as they were. And that whatever wider glimpse of, the cosmos, the place we live in, any of that they got from that experience, they didn't want. So it's a mix. It's a mix. A lot of people I talk to on the phone or via email, and then some people in
Mhm.
person. So yeah, it
Yeah.
varies case by
Yeah.
case.
Yeah, I get that not wanting to talk about certain things again. I actually have a friend, Jenny. She was on the podcast, and she had been on a couple other podcasts, and she's like I think maybe after like the fifth time telling her story, she's like, you know what, I can't do this anymore. Like people were still reaching out to her to be like, hey, would you like to tell your story? She's like, I can't do it anymore. I don't want to tell
Yeah.
it anymore. I don't want to talk about it. So,
Yeah.
it's especially when it's traumatic, because hers was pretty traumatic. So like, and I can see like a Bigfoot encounter, especially depending on the kind, it being fairly traumatic. I mean, it's like you said, it shifts your whole worldview, and it's it can do some mentally damaging things. When you encounter any of this stuff, whether it be paranormal or a Bigfoot. or some unknown creature. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but I did want to, because I started following, before I didn't know it was you, but I started following the Greenhand bookstore like a long time ago.
Oh,
And
awesome.
so I mean, I love anything Maine personally, just because I'm from Maine. So like
Yeah.
I attract to that real quick. And it's they're used book. A lot of them are used books, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, the
And
most of the shop is used, yeah.
yeah, okay. And you would post pictures of some of these books, and I was just like, damn, I forgot about that book or something like that. I remember reading that book before, and so I wanted to know, like, what made you want to open, a bookstore, and how long have
Oh.
you been doing it?
The shop has been open. It'll be 15 years in November. So it's
Wow.
been,
Wow.
which
That's
seems
awesome.
like both a million years ago and yesterday at the same time. So, um, but yeah, I had been working office jobs and also had worked at the Portland Public Library, which I really, really liked. And economics forced me to leave, unfortunately, and I will forever miss that job. Yeah, and I had always wondered if I could, would I be able to, open a bookshop and run a bookshop? Like, could I do that? Like, would it work?
Mm-hmm.
And I hit a stopping point where, the economy took a wicked downturn in 2009, and I interviewed for a bunch of jobs and just wasn't getting any response. And I have like a pathological aversion to going on unemployment. So I cashed out. I had a retirement account from one of my prior jobs that I'd worked for a long time, and cashed that out and was like, well, I'm just going to invest it in myself, and use that to help me open this shop. And
Yeah.
yeah, and so it's been a real weird journey, with a lot of ups and downs. I work way too much, which is kind of hilarious because most people just imagine I sit there and read all day, which is not at all what happens. But I'll let them have their fantasy. I would like to be sitting and reading all day. That would be nice. But yeah, but I love books. I love talking about books. I love handling books. Like, it's just, and yeah, I don't know. It's, even though there are days where I just want to you know, I'm not going to say burn it all down, but there are days where I just want to be like, no, I'm done. I'm cooked. But all I have to do is just wait a couple of days and the enthusiasm comes back again. So so far I have not been able to get away from it. I like it too much. So, which is good.
All right. That is good. That is good. Well, so I was also, because it's on Congress Street. Is that correct?
Right by Longfellow Square. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, next to Joe's Smoke Shop.
Yeah, I assume the traffic it through there is pretty decent, huh?
Yeah, when I was first looking for a space for the shop, I knew I had to find a space that was between Monument Square and Longfellow Square, because that's like the main pedestrian corridor through downtown Portland. I was like, it's got to be in that, however many block radius right there. And this is right on the edge of it. So I'm like, for a long time, I was the last kind of retail outpost on that strip. We have newer neighbors now. We have Weekend Vintage, which is across the square from us now. They're pretty great too. They're more recent, and Enterprise Records is over there too now. So there's a little bit more on my end compared to what it was. But when I first opened, probably the first 5 or 10 years, it felt like living on the edge of the frontier, the wild lands of that little triangle where everybody kind of circulated between Cumberland Farms, 7-Eleven, and Joe's Smoke Shop to get their beer was like right there. And like we were on the edge. It felt like we were on the edge of no man's land for a long time.
That's funny. I would say that's like because I drive truck for work, and I work for a waste facility, and I go into Portland sometimes for dumpsters. That is probably like the worst spot that I drive through that I with a truck. Like I hate driving through that spot, that area of Portland with a truck. Like with a car, it's no big deal, but with a truck, I'm just like, oh man, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, everything is squeezed so tight. There's no room for error. It's a really
Yeah.
tight little bottleneck right there with stuff coming from a million different directions. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's a beautiful spot though. Like I enjoy like to walk around there. I think I went when I was a kid, we went to the movie theaters. I don't think it's exactly right there, but it's near it. And I don't know if it's still a movie theater anymore either, but
Was it the Nick
uh
that you used to go to?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, down on Temple Street. Yeah, that's still there. They're
Yes.
still trucking
Oh,
along.
okay.
Yeah, the Nick. The Nick is
Yeah.
still alive.
Nice. Nice. That's cool. That's cool. But anyways, so did you ever have like a cryptid counter for yourself at all?
I have yet to. I've spent a fair amount of time in the woods at this point. But
Mm-hmm.
I grew up. It's kind of it's not really the suburbs, but it's not downtown. We grew up near woods, but I didn't spend a lot of time in the woods. They were just always right there.
Yeah.
And I think, who knows, this might be a whole different story if I had spent more time in the woods. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, I've never had a cryptid encounter myself. I've seen weirder things on Congress Street than I've seen in the woods at this point.
I've seen some pretty weird things on Congress Street too.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Uh,
but I've talked to a lot of people who have, definitely seen something that doesn't fit the bill for any of the known Maine mammals. So, after a
yeah,
certain point,
yeah.
you're just like, yeah, okay, there's stuff going on out there that doesn't doesn't fit any of the typical Maine mammals, the known Maine mammals. So, yeah. So I've talked to
Interesting,
enough people,
interesting.
and and when I'm out there, I'm always like, my head's on a swivel. And then, although I was so busy looking around me today when I was out hiking, that one of my companions was like, "Wow, that's real brave of you." And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "You just keep walking through all this poison ivy." And I'm like, "Wait, you could have told me."
Oh no.
So I guess I'll find out if I'm allergic to poison ivy or not tonight. But
Oh
yeah,
boy.
but yeah, I've seen some really cool stuff, I've seen, eagles fly by and, all sorts of
Oh
other
my God.
stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and had, crazy frog choruses sing to me while, a tiny damselfly sat on my hand and stared at me. I mean, that was pretty cool, but that wasn't a cryptid, so still waiting, still waiting.
I would love to be able to have an encounter to where that I can say specifically, I'm like, yeah, that's definitely something that's not of a known species. I think my personal encounter with what I think is a cryptid, I couldn't tell what it was. I could only see red
Mm.
eyes in the woods. So
Ooh.
at the time, I associated it with demons. Well, I was like, that's a demon because I got that overwhelming sense of dread
Mm,
and
hmm.
instantly wanted my gun. And as soon as I felt fear, my dogs stopped barking because at the time they were barking. And then hearing stories and stuff recently, because this happened in 2016, So I didn't start getting into podcasts until like late 2020. I used to think podcasts were dumb. I'm like, who wants to sit here and listen to people chit chat about random
And look at
stuff?
you now.
And yeah, now I listen to so many podcasts, it's ridiculous. And now I
Yeah.
do one.
Yeah.
But I started listening to like a paranormal show, and they talked about cryptids a lot, and they heavily talked about Dogman. And so I
Mm.
heard a lot of Dogman encounters, and the more I heard, I'm like, maybe I think that's what I saw was a Dogman, just
Oh.
due to its size, because it was behind a boulder that was in a rock wall on the side of my property, and the rock wall, I know because I used to like hold my kids' hands while they walked down the rock wall. I mean, it was in the woods, but it wasn't like in the woods. There was just a little bit of
Yeah.
trees. It was probably like 10 steps to the from the when the trees start to where the rock wall is. And this one part that the where I saw those eyes, that rock, it was like a boulder, and it was like 6 feet tall. So, and it was whatever it was standing behind it, and it was tall enough to be able to see the red eyes over it. Unless
Over it.
unless it
Wow.
was a an owl that decided to land on a rock, but which is also possible. But I always thought they had like a white glare to their eyes, but instead of red.
Yeah. I'm not
But
sure.
I don't know.
But yeah, I don't know either. I mean, an owl is also cool.
Yes, yes, it's very. I mean, it's I have one right here.
Oh,
So
nice. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
thanks.
I've only run into an owl in the woods once, and that was amazing. We were
I
looking
bet it was.
for, I was with a friend and her daughter, and we were in the woods up in Northport looking for the foundation stones of the ghost house that's supposed to be up there, which we were probably in totally the wrong place. But but we're walking down this fire road, so it's like all grassy, and trees on either side, and it just swooped over us and then sat on a branch ahead of us and just watched us come and just kept preceding us down the fire lane. And I was like, it would be the coolest thing in the world if this
Wow.
is where we find that foundation, because that would be amazing. It would be like the owl led us to it, but that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So, but the owl was cool enough on its own that it felt like and definitely a more than adequate consolation prize for not finding what we were looking for. So
That's pretty cool. I love owls, obviously. I don't think I would have got a tattoo right on my neck if I
no, that would be
if I
weird. That would be
didn't. But
weird.
I, oh, I hate owls. But let's put it on here. Um, but I did. There's a so I wanted to ask you as well, because I know that I mean, your books are all Bigfoot and with other people's encounters, and you look into the history and all that. And so I was curious, have you ever had like an experience with like paranormal or anything like that, like a ghost or spirit or some kind of entity at all?
Um, I don't know for sure. There was something that happened when I was like, 15, maybe 15 or 16. Must have been 15. That was like a weird experience that put the hair up on the back of my neck. But it was an isolated incident. And when I tell it, it sounds totally innocuous. But at the time, it seemed like deadly strange, like very, very peculiar. So I was at, the house I grew up in, which was a very old house, one of the older houses in that part of Portland. And my family, like all my brothers and my mom, had gone off to do something. So the house was empty except for me and my boyfriend at the time, and we were up in my room. And we came downstairs and the kitchen light was on. And it was like broad daylight, summertime. There was no reason the light would have been on, even if other people were home. and definitely not on with everybody gone, because like our house was like super, like you have to turn off a light when you leave a room, like way into the energy efficiency. Like my parents were super thrifty, and so you did not leave a light on if you weren't in a room. It was just totally forbidden. You just didn't do that. And so it was super bright outside, the kitchen light is on, nobody else is home, and I was just like, it just like, it literally put the hair up on the back of my neck. And like my boyfriend at the time was like wigged out by it too. So I think there was also just kind of a strange feeling at the same time. But I'll just say, like, we were really glad that we were leaving the house at that point and we weren't hanging around anymore. So it was like, we turned the light out. We're like, is anything going to happen? Nothing happened. So it's like this very innocent seeming thing, but it was very wrong. And so that's it. But, you know, in talking to my brother, my younger brother, who, you know, lived in the house longer than any of the rest of us, the house, he was fully convinced it was haunted, because he would be sitting with my mom in the living room, and they were the only ones that were living in the house at the time, and they would hear people walking around up on the second floor where the bedrooms were. So he's like, anytime I asked him once, I was like, do you think our house was haunted? He was like, do I think our house was haunted? Our house was haunted. And I was like, wow. So, you know, because when all of us were living there, like I was the oldest, I had 3 younger brothers. Everybody's super loud all the time. It's like a constant riot going on in the house when you have that many kids running around. So I'm sure there were noises that happened that nobody would have noticed because there was too much other noise at the time. So, but once the house emptied out, then it became a little more obvious, I guess. So, yeah. So I'm like, man, I never had any experiences like that, but it would have totally spooked me out. So, I mean, I loved the weird stuff, but I was a wicked scaredy cat. So at the time anyways. So I would like to think now that I'd just get very quiet and listen very carefully and not run away screaming or anything like that. So
I'm full grown adult, and I know that, you know, most spirits can't hurt you, but if I hear something off, I get immediately scared. So, and then I'm just like, like I've left my bedroom karate chopping the air thinking that something's going to be there, you know what I mean? Because everybody knows karate chops kills ghosts.
Takes care of everything. Yep. Yeah, I mean, I say that I'm not a scaredy cat anymore, but I know that, like, you know, last year I was out after dark with, you know, friends at a bonfire at a location, and like we would each kind of take a turn stepping off into the woods a little ways and just listening. And I was definitely there were moments where I was just like, what's that? You know, like totally just like jumping out of my skin, giving myself minor heart attacks. And that was like with, you know, people I knew like 15 feet away, you know, so it was like, so yeah, so I'm not all done with the scaredy catness, I guess, but I like to think I'd stand and listen for a little longer now instead of just running away. Try to be receptive to, you know, kind of absorbing the experience before I call it good and head back to the fire, you know.
Yeah, because you might end up hearing a Bigfoot too, you know, especially if you're doing that in the woods.
Well, the location we were at, that was kind of the idea. So yeah.
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. But I also it's like partly, you know, fear of the unknown, but also I have a very healthy respect for wildlife. So, you know, so I'm like, good fences make good neighbors, you know, you stay over there, I'll stay over here. We won't get in each other's way and everything will be fine. So in the dark, you can't really do that because you can just hear things. And if you suddenly hear something right next to you, you're like, which way do I go?
What's the quickest route out of here?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's funny. So another question that I have for you is what has been, I mean, not that it's your favorite, but what's, I guess, one of the encounter stories that you interviewed for that you found most interesting, I guess, or if
Mm.
if you can answer that. I mean, I know there's, a bunch of stories all in there, but
Yeah.
I guess what would I guess the best way to phrase that question is like, I guess I, no, I guess that's the best way to phrase it. The most interesting encounter story that you've interviewed for.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of them, honestly. There's so many of them.
Yeah, I'm
And I
sure.
changed my mind about, which one I would consider kind of my favorite, but like the one that's the most perplexing is again back to Northport, weird old Northport. There's one where in the 90s a guy on Route 1 in a shuttle bus coming back from MBNA from working at NBNA saw something on the side. He and the bus driver saw something on the side of the road that basically looked like there had been an accident and that there was some sort of crew there um, that was cleaning it up, examining it. Who knows? But that's like the weirdest one. That was the one that kind of just I still scratch my head over and puzzle about it. But for the experiences that really stick with me, I'm kind of torn. It's usually the ones where it's not just the random encounter in the woods. Those are fleeting. You're not going to replicate them. So they seem kind of less attainable. But it's the
Yeah.
people who, especially in their childhood or teenage years, lived in an area where they repeatedly had encounters. Like that stuff just it fascinates me. And I'm sure like as a kid I read a lot of Nancy Drew and Harriet the Spy and all of that stuff and I had notebooks and I wanted to solve mysteries and so I would have just been all about like what the clues were. Very Scooby-Doo, like, what are the clues? How do we, figure out where this thing is, why it is where it is, how do we encounter it, so the encounters, like, Mike Ledbury in Brunswick and Susie further up north, like the people who spent years in these locations where they were growing up, encountering these things and having, some sort of interchange with them at least, a few times, that those are the cases that really, really fascinate me. And I think it's only because they're that far in those eyewitnesses' pasts that they can share them. Because I think a lot of the people, if you're, a grown adult who understands how the world works and you're having something like that happen where you live, you're not going to share it either, or, well, maybe for multiple reasons, but, because of what people will say, because what people will do, because you don't want to, violate whatever trust you feel like you formed with these creatures, so it's I think because it happened when they were kids that they're able to tell us about it now, decades and decades later. There's just something really special about that I know they certainly feel it was like a special time in their life and it was an adventure for them. They weren't so
Yeah.
worried at that time about what everybody would think or what would happen if they told people. Like it was a different experience because they were kids when it happened. So those are the ones that really, really stick with me.
Nice. I, you know, I feel like just children, and when we are all had been kids, we tend to see things more because, we haven't been diluted by society yet, Um, we have at least I did. I don't know. I can't speak for everybody, but when I was a kid, like I had like a great respect for the wilderness and nature and stuff, and I still do to this day. It's just there has been a time as I transitioned from teenager into an adult where, I just didn't experience things the same way. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
just didn't look at, nature the same way. I didn't look at I stopped having because I had paranormal encounters like my entire life and through that process of becoming a man, essentially, I just completely stopped having these encounters, or at least my mind was shut off to them to where I like didn't see it, you know. Um, and it's interesting. Kids creep me out for sure. I'll say that. Like when they're like, look at there's something there and there's nothing there. I'm like, what are you talking about? Um, But yeah, I think you're onto something there with it. It's definitely interesting when, child is in a area where they're seeing them more than just once, you
Yeah.
know. So
Yeah, and they're
it's there's
developing
something.
some sort of relationship with them, which is like,
Yeah.
I've discovered, all of my life I'm always trying to connect with things, and so that's just like
Hmm.
what's better than that to, even if
Yeah.
you're not best buds, but you have an interchange, you have some sort of understanding with this other thing. And I think
Yeah.
that's all that any of us wants, is to have that
Yeah.
some sort of rapport and understanding with other things around us. I mean, we do the same thing with our cats and our dogs, and it's
Yeah, we sure
we're
do.
trying we're
We sure
trying to
do.
connect, and other people too, but we're more likely to get hurt by other people, so it's a lot safer to do the cats and the dogs.
Yes, yes, yes. I agree 100%. Humans, when out in the woods, there are creatures that can hurt you. There are animals that can hurt you. There's plants like poison ivy that can hurt you. Um, but it's when I encounter another person in the middle of the woods, my hair stand like, and they could just be hiking just like me, and I still get fucking. I'm just like, "Uh, what's gonna happen? Like I'll grab a knife or something, or I'll put my hand. I'll make sure that my knife is in my pocket or something, just in case, something
Yeah.
like that. Or if I have my gun on my hip, I'll just like tap it to make sure it's still there.
Yeah.
It's because,
Yeah.
like you said, like humans are more scary than like that's what I fear most are other humans rather than,
Yeah.
the paranormal or anything in the wilderness.
Yeah,
So,
there's a reason why I don't go hiking alone,
yeah,
I've,
for sure.
I've always
For
got a
sure. And
hiking buddy,
nobody
and
should.
yeah. Yeah, just as a
Yeah.
good rule of thumb for so many reasons.
Absolutely. 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 Um, so I know there's a huge history about Bigfoot in Maine, and I know that so I am a descendant of the Penobscot tribe, and I
Oh,
know that there's
nice.
some folklore of Bigfoot that has to do with the tribe, but I just not 100% sure. And I know that you go into a lot of like the history like of the sightings or something with that has to do with Bigfoot, and I was just curious on what if you could share some of those details with us.
Oh, sure. Yeah. There's, I dug, like I said, my work really started with digging into archives and, historic accounts that were buried in documents and stuff like that. So, and a lot of those pan out to be there's like a whole slew of stuff which falls under like the wild man sighting kind of thing, which
Yeah.
is essentially a feral human. At different times they were called woods queers, because there was a tradition that if you spent too much time in the woods alone, or, even in a lumber camp with a bunch of other guys, you eventually just went off your head. There was a chance that would happen. And then you just kind of ran into the woods and just people would cite you occasionally, so there's definitely a whole category that falls under that. There are also stories from, I think, the Gorham and Scarborough area, which were probably late 1700s, maybe early 1800s, which were, again, obviously humans, dressed in clothing, stealing food out of gardens when they could, milking cows when they could. And I've tried to find, I always try to dig as far back as I can to get at the stuff. And there's apparently an affidavit somewhere, from the guy that told the original author those stories, but I've never been able to find it. But man, would I love to see how much changed between the different versions, because you're always like, yes, they're people, but did they just say that to kind of clear things up? Like the escaped circus animal kind of story, like, so there are those. I think the most interesting early Maine accounts are from the mid 1800s. And then there's a couple of those that are pretty cool. There was one, I'm going to forget the location, but it was in, there was definitely, the one I do know for sure that is the 1855, the McHenry case, which this guy found near Waldoboro, found what essentially sounds like a small black spider monkey. He was out chopping wood and this thing was there, and he was like, what do I do with this? But he he fed it different things, and based on his description of the creature and based on what it was willing to eat and what it didn't want to eat, it seems like it was probably actually a monkey, as opposed to, a tiny unknown hominid. And that Maine was a massive ports state at that time. There was shipping trade from all over the world, and there are document accounts of sailors bringing monkeys into Maine ports. So there's definitely a precedent for that. Wow.
Yeah.
But that's a really interesting one, because it's hard to track it back to its original one again, because so many records have been destroyed over the years. But there's enough details that, I feel fairly comfortable drawing at least an initial conclusion about it. There are other stories, and I can't remember if it was like South Gardiner or something like that, but they were very strange, in it was South Gardiner. Yeah. So 1895, people encountering something in the berry fields when they went to go pick berries, something that left footprints, and looked like a giant walking ape. So those were pretty interesting, but there's very, beyond a story or two, there's not much to go on for those, which as a historic researcher just drives you crazy,
In a world where true crime meets the supernatural and the unexplained.
Where true crime and chills go hand in hand.
Welcome to Total Conundrum, the podcast that explores the dark, the eerie, and the downright mysterious.
Join us as we embark on a spine-tingling journey through the mysteries that keep you up at night.
We're diving deep into true crime stories, uncovering the most baffling cases, and exploring the twisted minds behind them.
But we don't stop there. We're also exploring the paranormal, from haunted houses to cryptids and all the creepy things that go bump in the night. Get ready for some supernatural thrills.
And what sets us apart? Prepare for a dose of dark humor as we navigate through the creepy and bizarre.
We've got it all. Bone-chilling tales, banter, and mind-boggling conundrums. You won't know whether to scream or laugh.
So grab your favorite snack, turn down the lights, and join us for a roller coaster ride of true crime and the supernatural, sprinkled with a bit of comic banter.
Stay curious, stay captivated, and let's dive into the world of Total Conundrum.
Now available on your favorite podcast platform. Get ready to be captivated, creeped out, and cracked up with Total Conundrum. Thanks for hanging out with us here at Total Conundrum. Please make sure to check out our website and blog at totalconundrum.com for news, upcoming events, merch, bloopers, and additional hysteria. You never know what will pop up, so be sure to follow along. If you want to show your support for Total Conundrum and gain access to all of our bonus content, please visit our Patreon page. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The links are available in our show notes. If you have any questions, comments, recommendations, or stories to share, please email us at contact@totalconundrum.com. Episodes are available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. If you like the show, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate the love. Keep on creeping on, mother cluckers.
How many times can you search and search and search and just, there's nothing there. But
yeah,
those are the early ones that really are interesting to me. There's lots of stories that, if you pursue them further, usually resolve into, a fisher cat or a cougar or bobcat or something like that. So another fearsome predator that makes crazy noises in the woods and leaves big tracks.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not until you get up into the 20th century that you really wind up with good detailed reports that you can track back to people who are alive and can tell you more about them. So that turned out to be much more fruitful. I love the old stories, but they're so frustrating to try to research because you just keep running into dead end walls so much of the time. But with the people, I've had some extraordinary luck because you sort of cast the net wide and you're sifting through accounts and you'll find comments on message boards here and there, and it'll be under a username that, doesn't tell you anything about the person except for that they snowmobile, or, you don't know who the person is at all. And then by some weird, lucky chance of fate, 5 years later, you wind up meeting the person, So I've had really good luck. I think, I found writing Bigfoot in Maine, it took me over a decade to do. And it drove me crazy that it was taking me so long. But in the end, it was the right amount of time because it allowed a lot of these loose ends to kind of come together and connect in a way that they never, if I had whipped that book out in 2 or 3 years, none of that would have happened, So it kind of gave everything time to percolate and actually wound up being a way more exciting project in the end, even though it drove me crazy. And so here I am doing it again, so, but that's what I've found is like the projects that I think are taking too long, it actually turns out to have been the right amount of time. So I've learned to stop fighting that as much.
So I assume that you're getting more like encounter stories, which is why you were like, well, I should start, a part 2. Is that how that happened, or did you where you were like, I kind of want to like learn more about more about this phenomenon and see if there's more people out there that have these encounters, or or did they just keep coming in for you?
Yeah, I mean, when I was wrapping up Bigfoot in Maine, I said to myself and to the people I was interviewing that I was going to leave the project open-ended and just see what happened. And the almost immediate result was that people were calling me. People were contacting me. People I'd never talked to, never met, with their stories. And that started, I had pretty much finished the manuscript and was in the editing phase, working with an editor at my publisher to like trim an inordinately large amount of stuff from the book because it was way too long to start with. So I was in that process when I started getting calls, and out of the first half dozen or so calls I got, the majority of them were from one area. And I was just like, oh, okay, all right, here we go again.
Oh, wow.
And it was an area that I hadn't really been able to cover in the first book because I didn't have anything substantial from that area. So it filled in a huge blank space on my map and tied it to other stuff. And that just, it's not, I don't constantly get reports, but they do trickle in. And I've actually got at least two leads that I need to follow up on right now that came to me within the last month or so. So it's not so much that it's overwhelming, which is good. Because, I work overtime constantly trying to run my business, and work on the stuff that I've already got going. But it's enough to make me realize that, I'm not done yet. So, and I've probably got almost enough for the second book now. So I'm probably at the point where I'm going to start, kind of reeling it in and trying to nail down the stuff that I already have to work on. But there's probably room for one or two more, which who knows, maybe the people I'm going to talk to that got in touch with me in this past month or so might be those people. We'll see. And sometimes people talk to me and they don't, they just want me to have the information, but they don't want to have it in the book. So that happens too sometimes.
I bet. I bet.
But it adds another piece to the puzzle.
Right. Did you get anybody interested in telling you stories at Fortean Fest?
Oh, interestingly enough, the one person that did talk to me there was somebody who had left a message for me at my shop the prior month that I still needed. Nice. So I got to meet them in person, which was nice. And now I need to call them and follow up on it and and do all the things I need to do. So, but nothing new, but that was okay. I've got more than enough on my plate. So I'm not, it's not a quality, not quantity, I guess is the, I don't need 10 million sighting reports. It doesn't, I'm only one person. So when I get overloaded, or if it's stuff that I know I'm not going to get to, I send them over to the Maine Bigfoot Foundation folks because I've worked with them a lot. And one way or another, we get people sorted out so that they have somebody they can work with.
Nice. I've reached out to them once to have I can't remember his name. I think his name's Mike.
Yeah, Mike.
He's big, tall guy.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was gonna see if you'd be interested in coming on, but I think they sent me an email saying that to talk to somebody else. But regardless, I see him at all these events, so eventually I'm just gonna talk to him in person one of these times.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
anyways,
Mike's great.
so yeah, he seems like a wicked nice guy, very knowledgeable. He's every time number one, first of all, because I've seen him like 3 times now. I would go to every time I'd walk to the table, he's talking to somebody about the castings of the footprints and stuff, and he's always talking to somebody in like about something. So I'm just like, yeah, eventually I'll just talk to him.
Yes. Eventually
Eventually I'll just
you'll
wait
get a
for
mic
him
to
to be
him
free.
and yeah. Yeah, he's,
Yeah.
like so
Yeah.
many of us, he's like juggling work and family and all the stuff he wants to do with his so-called free time, which none of us really have. And yeah, it's always a
Right.
juggling act.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now you've taken in all these stories of Bigfoot and all this, and you know, y have you ever like done any kind of research into any other cryptids at all? Like, not that you're working on like a book or anything, but like done any like looking into any other creature?
Yeah, I mean, along with the Bigfoot stuff over the years, I've collected some odd stories. One like oversized wolf creature and, something else that sounds an awful lot like the Dover Demon and, things like that. When I first opened my bookshop, I was actually, I was subletting my back room to the International Cryptozoology Museum. So I got exposed, if whatever I hadn't already been exposed to by reading about all sorts of different cryptid stuff. I definitely got more than my fair share of exposure to all sorts of different cryptids because there's so many of them. Yeah, it's interesting. There's, I love the sea serpent stuff. Like I find that really fascinating. There's even the, the stories of little people in the woods, like those I find really amazing. I'm hoping someday to find out more about those. The dogmen, and then they're probably their more traditional counterparts, the loup-garou. And, talking to people who, grew up in Maine households which had French heritage, which was part of their upbringing, and being told, don't go out after dark or the loup-garou will get you, to keep the kids inside and behaving themselves. There's so much of that folklore and experiences intertwined with the things that I hear about. So anything that doesn't fit that's the stuff I'm always fascinated by. And so I've run into a lot of different stuff over the years, people seeing, birds that are way bigger than they should be, like a kind of a thunderbird type thing. And, all sorts of big and small things.
Awesome. That's awesome. Well, I'm definitely gonna have to check out your books. I'm always, like I said, I'm always interested in things that happen in Maine and people that, do this kind of stuff that are from Maine. So I'll definitely have to. Where can people find your books?
Oh, the easiest is if you want like a signed copy, especially. I sign them for people however you like them. If you order them through greenhandbookshop.com, which is my bookshop's website. You can also, if you go to the Cryptozoology Museum, they usually have copies in their shop there, both the Portland and the Bangor location. And there are a lot of other places in Maine that sell them too. And you can pretty much find it anywhere online. It's a pretty
Nice.
thankfully it's a pretty well available book because the publisher has some pretty good distribution. So you'll even I get reports from people they found it at like a random CVS or a random Walmart or something like that. So they're out there in the wild. But yes, you can also order them from greenhandbookshop.com, and I'm happy to sign them for you however you like.
Nice. Shit, this always happens to me. I was gonna say something and then I forget. Anyways, so oh yeah. So you said that the cryptozoology Maine is also in Bangor. I thought they were moving completely to Bangor. Are they keeping both?
They will be.
Are they keeping the Portland one?
Well, the Portland one remains open for now. In Bangor, they have a bookshop, which also it's like a bookshop gift shop, and then it has some smaller displays, including some really cool stuff. So it's definitely worth checking out if you're up on Hammond Street in Bangor. They're out there because Lauren's up there now. So yeah. So there's the little place up in Bangor, kind of like a placeholder. They're eventually going to be in this really big, amazing building up in Bangor that Lauren was able to buy from the museum. And they're in the process of renovating that now, but that takes time. But he's super excited about it, and I can see why, because the building when they finish, it's going to be phenomenal. So it's going to be really exciting.
Great. And once he's finished, he's going to be out of Portland completely, or?
I believe so. Yeah, I think that is the plan.
Okay.
Portland's so expensive, and yeah, the rent just keeps going up. And the fact that he was actually able to buy and own the building for the museum up in Bangor, I think is going to help kind of secure the museum's foothold and make it less fragile. Because when you're depending on landlords, there's only so far that you can go with that, I think, if you're trying to create a full permanent institution.
Yeah, for sure. So I was gonna say something else and I forgot again. Oh man, I really need, because I do this a lot. You said that you listened to a couple episodes. I'm sure that it's happened in one of those episodes, at least, if not all of them, where my guest is talking and I literally have something that I want to ask, and then I forget when I have the opportunity to ask it. But I guess, we'll just, I'll ask you my favorite wrap up question, and that is, are you finding fulfillment within writing your book, distributing your books, and your bookstore?
Yeah, absolutely. I find I've met some really amazing people because of it, and I've been to more of Maine than I've ever been to. It takes me to corners of Maine that I would probably never have gotten to if I hadn't been researching the book. And I've learned more about how all of Maine, like Maine is such a huge state. It's very difficult to look at a map and understand how all the bits and pieces fit together. But if you're out there, driving from town to town and realizing how everything kind of connects and how the boundaries between towns and counties are so irrelevant some of the time, it's a real eye-opener. So far as like understanding Maine better, it's been tremendously helpful. And I mean, I love Maine. I love all its weirdnesses and all of its boringnesses. and I love it, and I can't help loving, how hard it is to live here sometimes, but I would never live anywhere else. And so, yeah, it's anything that lets me see more of the woods too. Like I spent most of today out in the woods tromping around, and, sticking my boots into giant squishy mud puddles and finding leaves in my everywhere. And yeah, so it's great. Yeah, I think it's definitely fulfilling. And then kind of the research and talking to people and tying stories together and creating some sort of, comprehensive narrative out of it so that other people can read it and experience those moments too. I think it's all of it is rewarding, like from start to finish, and each for a slightly different reason. So yeah, I definitely think it is fulfilling. I think, if I suddenly wound up not having to work or not being able to work, physically, labor wise, I think that continuing with my writing and my research would probably help sustain me. Like I would be happy if that was all I had to do. It would be a very happy thing.
Yeah. That'd be great. So, I'm also an aspiring writer, and one day I will finish this book that I started like 5 years ago. So we'll see if that ever happens. But yeah, no, I love reading, and at this point now with the podcast and stuff, I feel like I have more reading material than I ever have.
I'm sure.
Because I have so many people on that are authors and obviously want to check out their stuff. So I'm definitely gonna so when you order the book through your shop, and do you request for you to sign it, or like how does that work?
Yeah, you can either like send me a separate email, or there's actually, I think, a spot in the checkout where you can write a note. You can type in a note. So either way, I mean, I'll sign it either way, but if you want it personalized or anything like that, you can add a note, but I'll sign it regardless.
Okay.
So that's kind of
all
automatic.
right.
So try to make it easy,
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so if you don't mind, if you have any social medias or anything like that you want to throw out there, you're more than welcome to.
Sure. Yeah, my personal stuff, which would, like, if I'm going out hiking and posting photos of it later, or poking around in Bangor and looking at architecture, all that stuff, and lots of cat and book photos as well, is at Souliere on Instagram. So MSOULIERE. And then the bookshop is at Greenhand Books. And I'm on, you can find the shop on Facebook as well. So I'm pretty easy to find out there in the world. And then I've still got the Strange Maine blog. And then the Greenhand also has its own blog too. So, but I'm mostly a shutterbug. So there's lots of photos on my socials, and the writing kind of comes along as it can after that.
That's awesome. Well, Michelle, I greatly appreciate you coming on tonight and chatting with me. This was an awesome conversation. I really enjoyed it, and I'm super grateful that you took the time to do this. Time is our greatest currency, and the fact that you chose to spend this hour with me, it means a lot to me. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's been very nice talking to you. And I will tell you that all you have to do to finish that book is just keep chipping away at it, and eventually it will happen. So
Thanks. Yeah. Eventually, I know it will. I know it will get done at some point. When, I don't know.
Yep. As long as it eventually gets done, that's all that matters.
Yeah. I agree. Well, everybody, that is today's show. I hope you show Michelle some love, and definitely check out her blogs and check out her books. I'll put everything in the links to everything in the show notes so you guys can all find it. But I appreciate you for being here and listening. It means a lot to me. So if you don't mind, leave a rating and a review. Like, follow, share, subscribe, do all that. You can also leave a rating and review on the website if you so choose to, which is wheretheweirdonесarepodcast.com. That's where you can also find the merch, the hot sauce, and the blog. So, other than that, I think that's all I got for you guys tonight. So, again, I appreciate you for being here. So, remember, question everything and stay weird.
This concludes our broadcast day. Click.
Because in the end, none of us have very long on this earth. Life is fleeting. And if you're ever distressed, cast your eyes to the summer sky, when the stars are strung across the velvety night, and when a shooting star streaks through the blackness, turning night into day. Make a wish.